It's like really amazing to
Were
me.
you thinking about Pollock's statement at this point, I am nature?
You know, I try not to let myself be influenced by art. I know I am, but I always really am seeking after an original, something that's more mine, you know, and of course I look at art and I
What,
know art
about
history.
Ana Mundieta? I mean, was she in your consciousness at this point?
I knew her personally. I don't know. I mean, I really try to like just focus on the image and then think about it a lot and then just do it. And I try not to think. I don't like to reference art directly.
But you can't deny that it.
No, of course not. But
obviously,
I try to do my own thing. You know,
yeah.
These are like dancers. I've always. I'm really into movement.
And what about the material? What kind of pigment or what material did you use?
A biodegradable paint. I made sure they wouldn't hurt the environment. And I don't remember exactly what kind it was. Something I bought in New York.
Okay. All right. Now this is interesting in relation to the last one because what you're talking about is somehow the particleization of the images, of the idea that everything is made up of some smaller units.
Right. So then you see here the figure, which is like coming out of like, field of wheat or some, movement in nature, and the figure comes out of it. So it's a ballo della tavola I did in Italy, so it's a dance of the table. And, on the table is a chicken again.
Bellagio? Was this when you were at Bellagio?
I lived in Italy before that, all of '86. My apartment in New York, my loft in New York burned down, and I ended up moving to Italy for
Your loft burned down?
Yeah, in 1985.
Did you lose a lot of
East
work?
Village, about 50 paintings. I lost everything. The whole place burned down. I ran out of there with one shoe. That was it.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Did that devastate you?
Yeah, it did.
Is that why you went to Italy?
Well, at that point, I had a representative in Italy. They're Americans, but they had a gallery in Italy. And they said, come to Rome, because Rome had to rebuild too, had a fire and had to rebuild. And so I decided that that's a good idea. I need to get out of New York. And so I was going to go for 3 months. I ended up staying a year and 3 months.
What part of Italy?
Wherever I had a show, I'd moved to, kind of, but basically Rome.
Okay.
Yeah, it was really.
Were you affected by all that, ancient, Renaissance Italian art and whatnot?
I loved it. I think it's beautiful. Italian. Italy's my favorite country in Europe. La Bella Vita, that's for sure. It's just beautiful. But yeah, I mean, but then I'm doing this, which doesn't have that much to do with, with classical art. But.
Okay, so elaborate a little more just on the iconography on this one.
Well, it's more of an integration. The table, the person, the nature. Again, the chicken's there. You can't tell if it's coming out of his brain or whatever. It's like, I mean, is that, again, are we like, fighting for the food or just investigating that? I don't have the answer. I'm just looking at it, and it's surrounded by fruit.
Okay, and once again, we see the upside down table, I believe.
Right. Yeah, I did in Madrid, and they just done a plaza there. I really love architecture and urban spaces, and they had changed this Plaza del Sol in Madrid. They put new lamps up. It was this big controversy for the Madrileños, because the lamps, instead of being like traditional Spanish ornate ones, were pointy like that, and so that's what those points come from. Actually, it's silly detail.
And now you've got dancing figures.
Well, here you see influence of more of a Baroque, like scene type thing. More that you can, Rivera or
well, the movement also reminds me of Matisse's The Dance, the movement of the figures.
Also, yeah, a lot of my work is, definitely influenced by Matisse, for sure. Yeah, and again in movement, and just like a big mixture of people, like you would see in a ceiling in a Baroque palazzo or palace in Europe. But of course, made only in one color and then cut out.
So is that made from separate pieces of?
Yeah, it's quite a large piece. It's about, 6 feet by, 9 feet. And yeah, it all comes apart. Well, the red piece is all one, and then the legs come off. The legs come off of the.
So you cut out sections within the wood and then paint it?
Yeah, and then I just put it on with Velcro.
On the wall. Velcro comes in very handy for a lot of artists these days, yeah. Okay, now, where were you at this time, Proton Couple?
89, back in New York. It was.
You moved into a new studio, or you moved back?
I moved back after Europe. I moved back to San Antonio in '87 for 6 months.
Okay.
Lived in King William when nobody was there. I could actually afford a whole house, and then I decided to go back to New York. And this is again another a total conglomeration of all my imagery. You know, it's a table, but the new thing here is that there's 3 circles basically, or 3 points, which are a symbol of 3 quarks that make up the proton. That's a recurring theme in my work, either in the positioning of fruit on a plate, or else this is in a larger context.
Do you read scientific journals? Do you do
No,
any
I'm just really interested.
investigation?
I mean, since I was a kid, every time I'd, be lying in the grass looking at the stars, and then you turn around, and then when you go into the grass, and you might see an ant passing, and in my mind, I keep on getting smaller and smaller, and then thinking of, it's just so amazing to me that everything is in constant movement with this atoms
Well,
and protons.
it seems that a lot of artists, I mean, over the centuries, have been fascinated with this, what you're talking about, with microcosm, macrocosm, and
Right, but then the other way,
somehow
and then looking up at the
relationship.
stars and just thinking that, just incredible universe, and that we're such a teeny weeny part of this giant Milky Way, and then there's like billion Milky Ways. It's just, I mean, who needs religion when you have that?
Were you ever into science fiction in terms of popular culture or anything like that?
I'm interested in it. I don't read scientific journals or anything like that. I kind of, I read the paper every day, and there's, the basic stuff for lay people comes out about science, and I'm, fascinated with that.
Did you ever study it in college?
No, I wasn't very good at science.
Yeah.
Kind of better
Me
at
neither.
cultural things. Yeah, so these are 2 people on either side, and it's like a table, but at the same time it's a proton, so it's called the proton couple.
Ah.
And then you see an upside down calavera up there, a skull.
Ah. Okay, now the table's a little more easy to decipher, I guess you might say, in this one.
Right.
But now the Annunciation with the Virgin on the wrong side. Tell us what you mean by that.
Well, when I was at Columbia, I was very interested in Romanesque art, and the Virgin has to be on a certain side in Catholic iconography, Christian iconography, and this on the wrong side. But the goddess or the Virgin, you can tell by breast and the left side, and in movement again, and then the other side is like a spiritual sort of confrontation happening at the table, which again is the form for any potential to happen. I was trying to eliminate the Christian iconography, but of course, plain art. I mean, it's such a big part of Western art, and so I was just trying to. I'm always trying to sort of eliminate the organized religious aspect of anything, but and emphasize the.
So it sounds like you had this sort of plan. I mean, to what extent is there room for spontaneity in your creative process?
I would do drawings and make sure that it was really as spontaneous as possible, and then go directly from a small drawing to a large piece.
At one point, though, did you sort of have it clear that this was going to be the Virgin on the wrong side?
David, your questions are like very detailed. Let me see.
Well, but it's interesting to know. I mean, because there's a whole tradition in contemporary art of artists who just make the work, and then when they're done, they sort of study it and determine what it is. And
right.
it sounds that this is
it's
more
a combo.
planned.
It's a combo. Yeah, it's probably more spontaneous. I mean, I would do the drawing on a large scale, like a whole 4x8 sheet of wood, and do just with paint, but like a drawing, and try to reproduce the spontaneity of the small drawing, and then cut it out afterwards. Before I would cut it out first and then paint it later, but they're a little bit more stiff. In order to be more spontaneous, I went to drawing first on the wood and then cutting it out, and I used thin wood so I could cut it out just with a utility knife. Didn't even try not to use a saw, just so I can make more, unusual little detailed, more spontaneous imagery and line. So yeah, it does come later, I think, and then I don't know. I just started drawing, and I do try to keep it spontaneous and open and just sort of more, automatic. But then at the same time, all of a sudden say, well, I guess I can't help that, my cultural Catholic baggage comes out, I guess. So.
Okay, these are 2 works now. We're into the 1990s. Are you still in New York here?
Yes.
Okay. There's that form we saw earlier in Quark Table Landscape, the Quark form again. And Eat That Chicken.
Yeah, I love jazz. That's what I learned in New York. And this is after a song by Charlie Mingus called Eat That Chicken. It's a great song, which me and my chicken, so I decided I should do a painting about it. And Guillermo Nicolas owns this one. But you know, that song is just basically all it says, eat that chicken, eat that chicken. I can just see those guys practicing all night long, and they're like starving to death, you know, after in the middle of the night, they probably got some fried chicken. And did a song about it, you know, and so I decided to just do a song about everybody trying to eat the chicken.
A painting, you mean?
Huh?
You did a painting.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds painting, yeah. And it's on a tablecloth. This one is on an actual table.
You painted, okay, all right. This,
on actual fabric. That's,
was this the first time you painted on a tablecloth?
It was around that time I did a lot of that.
What led you to, I mean, how did that idea come
It was
about?
when I was at Bellagio. Because the first time I was in Italy in '86, I did all these paintings. Then bringing them back cost a fortune, so I said I have to get practical here. And so I got the fabric,
paint it, fold it, stash it in the suitcase?
Right, I painted it, I just put it on the wall, and then fold it, brought it back in the suitcase, and then when I got to New York,
Got through customs without them
I
carrying
glued them down. It worked out perfectly.
Right, now that's very practical. But then it opened a whole new door for you, is what it did.
Right, and then I started, right, well, we'll see. And the one on the left is that, is
now,
Proton.
Since we're going chronological, in 1992, you had an opportunity, is this your first public artwork?
Yes.
And you want to tell us how that came about? Did you apply for it, or were you invited?
I was a finalist. They sort of call you up, say you're a finalist, bring your work in and give a presentation, and get an idea for this.
Did they approach you, or did you initially apply?
They approached me.
That's great.
Yeah. So I didn't apply. I didn't even know about public art at that point.
Well, this
so
is
it's great because artists are always like have no money.
Yeah,
this is
so this was the first.
Right. This is a train that goes out of Grand Central. This is in North White Plains in Westchester County. And there's 68 of those capitals. So, I mean, it was a very boring station.
Was this sponsored by the Public Art Fund?
The Public Art Program of the City of New York.
Public Art Fund in New York?
And Arts for Transit.
Okay, because that's a great program.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. 2 sponsors. And so they give you, say you have so much money and see what you can do. And I decided I moved to Monterrey, Mexico to make them. You give them the New York price, and then you go to Mexico and make it. Had to ship it back and everything.
How complex was it to install something like this, since you had never done this before?
It was easy. I mean, I just, L brackets, and I mean, they help you.
You had a crew?
No, they did it. I just had to make sure that everything was set perfectly, and they installed it. Okay. Different programs work different ways. Sometimes
have you visited it lately? How is it holding up?
It's been a while.
Wear and tear.
It's painted with this epoxy enamel paint they use for bridges, so it's pretty strong. But there's 68 of those. Each column has one, both platforms, and then there's some really large pieces that go along with it too.
Okay. Oh, what was the question?
It's about 12 feet.
Okay.
Yeah, you can see the people down there.
Oops. Right.
And the train passing.
Okay. Now, when did you move back to San Antonio?
I always forget. 91?
Okay, so you are, just as I thought, you're back.
No, 94.
You're back in San Antonio here because I know the painting on the right is a big homage to San Antonio. And the painting on the left, you'd already painted on tablecloth, so now you're painting on dish towels.
Right.
So now you're really getting into much more elaborate iconography here, I think. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, well, the one on the right is painted on oilcloth, which a lot of people, when I grew up on eating on oilcloth at the table, it's like, sort of, working class.
Easy to
tablecloth.
clean?
Huh?
Easy to clean?
Easy to clean, And I bought these at Tienda Guadalupe, and it's kind of typical, West Side, But this table, I was kind of in shock when I came back to live in, in New York, being thin is like real important, and here it's not. So I studied what is it that San Antonio, Texas eats, or Americans out of New York and California, or Texas in particular here in San Antonio. So it's divided up like the 3 ethnic groups of San Antonio, and it goes according to population. So the blue part is Tejano, Mexican American. The bottom, the brown gingham is German, and then the red and white is Southern, goes by cultural cuisine. So the different foods that, fried chicken and the barbecue and chicken fried steak is very heavy duty food. And the German food is, heavy duty too. And the Tejano food is, meat based, lard in the beans and too much cheese. fried things. It's just amazing. It's just, but it's American influence on these things, the cheese and Mexican food in Mexico is not like that. But it's a convergence. So in the middle, you have the tortilla de harina with German sausage, and that's very common in festivals, street fairs in San Antonio, and the barbecue and even the German and the African American food have jalapenos. It's a convergence of these foods, with the American influence. So that's what that's about. Different hands coming in, eating.
And the recipe for human, what is that?
That actually is one of 50 paintings that I did on the history of Mexican food, which included ingredients and recipes and diaspora, and then inframundo had to do with ritualistic food, and this one is under recipes. And actually it's a recipe, I read a lot of books on it, and it used to be a ritual food of one of the 20 months of the Aztecs, and they had to eat a ritual food, and it was with human and corn and salt. That was it. And then the books I've been reading also say that this was the precedent for pozole, modern day pozole, which now has been substituted with pork and spices. So this is a picture that a friend of mine took of a heart transplant, and then I added salt, for the wound, and corn, and it's painted on a dish towel.
Before we go to the next frame, let me ask, since you did move back in '94, what prompted you to leave New York?
High rents. High rents, and it was, I lived in Europe. Part of the reason why it was like when Reagan was in, and all the artists are like, oh God, they're getting so conservative, and everybody wanted to leave the country. A bunch of people my friends moved to Italy, and but then after being there for a year, even though I spoke Italian really well, and people from there even thought I was from, if I were in the north, I'd say I'm from the south, they would believe me. But I realized that I'm American, I'm not Italian, I would never be accepted. I got back to New York, I was so happy to be back in the United States, and then I realized, well, I'm Mexican.